Jon Miller, Chris Williams. From the Channel Seed Studios, it's Miller and Williams. Presented by Wild Rose Casino and Hotel. 3 locations in Iowa. 3 times the fun. You'd rather be here. This is Iowa Everywhere.
Good evening. It's probably good morning, to be honest with most of you. You're probably listening on Wednesday morning. We are recording this on pretty late in the evening on Tuesday, the 26th of September. My name is Chris Williams. I'm joined, as always, by the Prince of the Parlay. He is Jon Miller. Made a lot of people rich over the weekend. Now we got to fade you, Miller, because you're winning too much.
You know, you're right. I mean, last week when we recorded this, I had played 46 parlays since week 0, and I had won 6. But I was still profitable on the year. So I will put it this way. You know what I did last week. It was a legendary week.
It was iconic.
You're the one that says they're sucker bets. They probably are. But I will say this. I have rules. I have limits. I will not risk more than $1,000 per through the NFL playoffs and Super Bowl. Okay. So that's like 6 months. Right. If I have 1,000 and I've lost it, I'm done. I'm not making any more wagers. So this year, week 0, I loaded my account with $400, and that was 4 weeks ago. Okay. Pure parlays. I topped over $5,000 this weekend. So what I did is I brought $2,000 home. Sitting in the bank. It's never going back in this year. And from now on out, baby, woo-wee. You thought I was taking chances before. We're taking chances now.
You're going to lose
that's what I did last year. Last year, I got up $3,000. Same thing. First 4 weeks of the season, up $3,000. And then I started making 250 wagers here, 150 there. I made a straight up $500 wager, and it was gone in 2 weeks. And I was so pissed at myself. I'm like, Jon, you're dumb. This year, I'm not doing it. I'm going to continue to make wagers in the same amounts that I've been making so I can keep going. Let's see if we can take this to $10,000. All right. That's the goal. The Prince is $10,000 or bust. That's it.
The Prince of the Parlay, Jon Miller. We are presented, as always, by our friends at Wild Rose Casinos in Clinton, Emmitsburg, Jefferson. They're a partner of Circus Sports. Our friends at Circus Sports. I got the Circus Sports hoodie on tonight. If you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening anywhere, we appreciate it. Talk to Jon about the situation at Iowa. We'll get into that probably for most of the show. I want to encourage everybody. I did a podcast today with Dan McCarney for the CW pod, which was awesome. You know what, Jon, the older I get, and I'm 39 now, it's not that I didn't appreciate those guys, but like I have this like craving to like get them on the record and to do shows with these legends. Cause it's you know what I mean? Cause someday Dan's not going to be here. Someday we're not going to be here, but people will be able to go back and like today I asked him about like some of his memories, and he starts, Mac just gets choked up. Like he's just an emotional guy, and like those words will live forever. And I don't know. I don't know what it is. If I'm just getting more, you experienced that with Zabel for how many years? It's like every show you're sitting there doing with the guy and you're like pinch me type moments. That's how I am sitting there doing a podcast today with Dan McCarney. Right. And I've done probably a dozen with him in the last couple of years. And it's just really special.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I would probably feel like, 10 years from now when Kirk Ferentz is about 10 years into his retirement, that I'll feel that way because I have a great affinity for Kirk, and I totally get that. And I just think the older we get in our own individual lives, the greater the frequency of gratitude. We have feelings of gratitude. And talking to someone like Dan, you were there when he was there. You were just a pup. But, and in Dan's situation, too, he's got to be in his 70s now or pushing him. man, you just look back on people, places, and things with a great deal of gratitude, and you want to express it. And at times, the emotions are just incredibly thick. I'm dealing with that now as a dad. Like every year, we have a family routine where we go around and we say nice things about and good memories about that person on their birthday. And this year, for my birthday, my oldest daughter Grace said that after a long thing, she's like, Dad, I feel like I've always known you. I feel like you and I have lived multiple lives together. It's just this time around, the universe knew that I would need you as my father. Dude, I couldn't speak.
Yeah.
I've never felt that way in my entire life. I literally had the wind knocked out of me. And I think it's just a natural thing, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, Dan and I have a history too. It's not a bad one, but like you said, I was a puppy is being kind to what I was. You know my background more than anyone. Like I got thrown into the 10-foot.
Yes.
I didn't have I went from being basically a high school senior to a semester of writing sports club beat writing at the Iowa State Daily to I was covering a Big 12 program with really no editor. For real. And I'm not taking shots at those guys. It's just it was just okay, here's the keys to the car. And so I did the best that I could, but I was also 19 and probably definitely dumb. I don't know
intimidated in media sessions. It's really intimidating when you're there with a bunch of older people that don't like you.
They did not like me. And then on top of it, I hadn't been trained in any of this, and I did my best, and I like to think I did okay but Mac was kind of who the fuck is this guy for a while, right? Because I'd say stuff and it's probably why some of the readers like me, because I would just say what I thought. I wasn't indoctrinated into this, media society or whatever it was. It was you. I kind of like you, right? You were the same way. You weren't this newspaper writer or anything that worked into what you were doing. But Dan, I don't think he ever disliked me. I don't think that that's ever the case. But I know that I got under his skin for a while, and we've talked about it.
Yeah.
And it's great now to be able to go through that, and we can go back on old times, and we laugh about it now.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
There was the time where you and me and Dace did the Thursday night show on MediaCom, where you guys hosted it, and then you would bring me on as the sidekick, or I don't even remember what my role was. And Dan, have I ever told you this story?
No.
So this was my senior year of college, and we did the preseason show where we all make our season predictions. Well, I was friends with a bunch of guys on the football team. Best man at my wedding was on the football team, right? It was a weird kind of deal, but whatever, it worked. And I go to practice because this is back when practices were open. You could watch every play of practice back in these days, which seems like an eternity ago. And McCarney is addressing the team before he comes over to do his scrum, and he goes, and I'm watching MediaCom last night, and these three fat sons of bitches picked us to go 4-8. God damn it. And I'm like, hey, I'm right here.
Dude, that just kills me, man. Just I
can't believe I never told you that story.
I never ever did any show thinking, oh man, Dan McCarney's going to be watching this, or Kirk Ferentz is going to be watching this, or anybody's, and it was that freaking MediaCom show, man. For the period of life where I lived in Des Moines and people recognized me when I went out, it's all because of that damn MediaCom Connections show. That freaking people watch that show, and it cracks me up that we triggered Dan McCarney. I feel like I just unlocked a life achievement. Not because it was Dan. I love Dan.
Oh, yeah.
But just that a coach is so pissed. Maybe that's one of the reasons why the Big Ten Pulse got canceled after 5 weeks. And then again, we just sucked.
But that show, though, it was like the first of an era. Like, it was the type of content that people really wanted, and it is everywhere now. But that was the
Yeah.
only place you could get it in our state at that time. Remember
Yeah.
that? Like, because sports talk wasn't really, I mean, it was kind of going, but not really. The internet existed, but it was more like recruiting updates. It wasn't like guys giving opinions and stuff like that. Like, that was a really cutting edge deal at that time.
It was, and it was a pure opinion show with Steve and I, and it was an hour long, packed a lot into it. And you were a part of it. Other people came in and had some cameos. Our bosses at the radio station like kind of put the kibosh on it because they wanted us to do that for them, which led to me getting a talk show on KXNO, then which led to Steve and I doing a show together after the big explosion. But yeah, man, I mean, it was the Wild West. We were writing our own rules as we went, and it was a great time.
I just thought that was funny. Every time I talk with Mac, we give each other a little bit of shit on that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was
I love
quite
it.
the deal. All right, let's talk about this Iowa situation. We are here in the Channel Seed Studios, Miller and Williams. You are going to see little ones walking behind me if you are watching on the YouTube. We're teetering on bedtime here on a night that my wife works late, so we're scrambling. The luxurious life of the sports podcaster.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed your Sunday pod. It was very raw.
I couldn't believe how long it was when I got done.
That was good though. I listened to the whole thing. I've kind of like, this is where Chris and I have a hard time on these reaction things, because he's very much like, these are my thoughts right now. Like, and he's really good at portraying that. I kind of more am like a big picture guy with Iowa. I'm not like that with Iowa State. I don't have the emotion towards Iowa. I like to look bigger picture here. It's a really weird spot because you've got this interim AD. You've got this contract with Brian Ferentz that I don't know what it actually means. I talked to you a couple weeks ago on this podcast about my fear for Iowa. I'll put it this way, I thought that contract could actually be contradictory in them winning games because they've won a lot of games playing that way over the years. And when you're all of a sudden playing USC, and like, I think Iowa would benefit from being a little bit of an outlier. And I still believe that. What's interesting here though, John, is I will keep pounding this pavement. You had really good analysis, I thought, on Iowa's offensive line on your Sunday show. Probably some that made me double think some of my opinions. But I can tell you this, like, this is a below average Iowa offensive line still. Like, all when it's all said and done, like, it's like rank the top 12 of the, how many years has he been there? 25, 24?
99 was his first year, so this maybe his 25th season or 24.
Okay, so let's take the top 12 Iowa offensive lines in the Ferentz. This isn't one of them. Okay?
No, nope.
It's probably not close. The lack of evolution scheme-wise, and then what's most important here, because otherwise we're having the same conversation that you've been having since the beginning of your career. The most important part to me is the offseason, in which it goes from fire Brian to, holy shit, we've got all these new toys. We've got a quarterback. Petrus was the problem. Now we're bringing in this guy from Michigan who played in the playoff. We're bringing in his tight end. Bringing in these new wide receivers. One of them's a guy from Ohio State. Oh, and now we're gonna send them off to California to have a retreat and work on their 7-on-7 drills. And at the end of the day, and we're just 4 games in, but it's almost worse in a way, because you're more talented, but the results really aren't much better at all. And what, I think my great fear here for Iowa is, let's say that Ferentz is here for another 5 years, just throwing out a number. I don't know if you're going to be able to go find a Cade McNamara or a Caleb Brown in the transfer portal again. Why? money's one thing, but these guys all are trying to get to the National Football League, and it's very clear that this Iowa coaching staff is not going to put you there if you play those two positions. That's my major point going into tonight.
I think it's very fair. By the way, I have 16 offensive lines off the top of my head that I think from the Ferentz era are better than this one, and it's probably more.
Okay. So I'm accurate then with my assessment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought Scott Docterman today for The Athletic and his column after the press conference, he had a really good column. And there was one thing in it that really, I mean, it's not surprising to me since I've been talking about Iowa's receivers are the nation's leader in running wind sprints since I was doing sound
the
off.
Infamous column. I remember the Hawkeye Nation column today.
Yeah.
Like it was yesterday.
I mean, this was probably like 2011, 2000. I mean, this is a long time ago. Jim Zabel was still alive, and he died in the spring of 2013, right? So I've only been, I mean, I'm the OG on this topic. And I read something from Scott today that even still stopped me in my tracks. So Iowa, Navy and Air Force. Navy averages 6.3 wide receiver targets per game. 6.3. Air Force 1.8. Horrible. But what do those two teams run on offense, Chris?
Triple option, wishbone.
Triple option. If they're throwing, they're losing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Iowa's third worst in the country, behind only Air Force and Navy. Iowa is targeting receivers an average of 7.8 times per game. And I bet you there are at least 25 teams in college football that average that many targets to receivers per quarter. And Iowa is doing that per game. This, and Scott's point of his column today, which is an overarching thing that I've been talking about for over a decade, you're not going to get kids to come to your school in the transfer portal at receiver anymore. Not going to happen. I would love to know.
This was like Caleb the last stand, right? Like this was it.
This is it. I think
you got this contract you had last year. Like this was the shot.
Yeah, we're going to redo it. You know, Cade McNamara's quote this spring, I just hope people continue to say that we're going to be the shittiest offense in college football. Please keep saying it. This weekend, it was a retweet by Old Takes Exposed because it's a shitty offense. And given the talent that they added, it's worse than last year. Statistically, Cade McNamara and Spencer Petras through 4 games are damn near in a dead heat. All right. So a lot of y'all, a big apology to Spencer Petras. Iowa is a place where quarterbacks go to regress. And that is the truth. And I fought against that for many years. And I had a number of year here anecdotes. Well, this is the reason. That's the reason. That's the reason. And I think all those things had validity to them. But it reminds me of the end of the Steve Alford era in basketball. Well, this player transferred because this player transferred because this, and this player transferred because this, and that player transferred because that. And all of them, in and of themselves, were valid reasons. But cumulatively, it's a problem. It's a problem. Cumulatively now for Iowa football, it's a huge problem. Iowa is even more of a laughingstock nationally now than they've ever been before. And the new AD that will be put into place probably in the first quarter, probably in January, and I believe that it will be Beth Getz, and I hope that it is. Whomever it is, your first major move as the athletic director, hey, welcome new Iowa athletic director, Beth Getz. And Beth Getz's first major move is to rehire Brian Ferentz on a 1-year contract to remain as offensive coordinator. That is no confidence. Your fan base will be pissed. It will impact donations to the University of Iowa. And that is a big old turd in a punch bowl as your first thing. Therefore, it will not happen. This will be Brian Ferentz's last year, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, been wrong before. His last year as Iowa's offensive coordinator. Ergo, this will be Kirk Ferentz's last year as Iowa's head coach because Kirk will not.
Well, let me ask you this:
without Brian. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, She's not going to fire Kirk Ferentz, assuming it's her.
No.
We're going under this assumption.
Right. Hypothetically,
I mean, does Kirk dig in?
How?
Does Kirk dig in and say, "Hey, we're either bringing Bryant's back or I quit"? Like, you know what I mean?
And
you think that's how it goes down? You think that's
absolutely
how it goes down? Okay,
100%, 100%. And if I'm Beth, I say, Kirk, your contributions to this university are immeasurable. We greatly, greatly appreciate your tenure and wish you all the best in your retirement. That's what I do. And I love Kirk. This isn't personal. I hate all of this. I hate it all. But the reality of the situation is we moved from disappointment in Iowa's offensive production. They haven't ranked over middle tier in the NCAA since, I think, 2010 or 11. So we've been disappointed with meager to shitty offensive production for over a decade. Now, last year, and for me, it was the year before, I had a post-game reaction show following the first bowl game against Kentucky where Iowa went 10-4. And I'm like, I'm bored. This is boring. I'd rather not watch this. I mean, I'd rather go 8-4 and have an exciting team to watch that I feel like every possession there's a chance to get a first down than this shit.
What if they go 9-3 or 10-2 this year and it's the same thing? I mean, like
I'm not interested.
Well, I know you're not. Like, so I mean, basically, we've come to the conclusion the only way, and this is where again I will come full circle with the opinion I had before the Penn State debacle. I mean, you got to ask yourself, you got to look yourself in the mirror, Hawkeye, because again, and I'm more of a
you got to look yourself in the mirror, brother. And what you gonna do when Hawkamania is running wild on you?
I'm coming at this. There's a lot of the audience that'll say, well, Williams is an Iowa State guy. He's never going to give Iowa a fair shake. And this is not.
It's not true.
It's not true. I'm coming at this like from a just guy who studies the sport. In the new Big Ten, without the West, like things are going to get a lot more difficult for Iowa. This is not me twisting the knife. This is a reality.
It's true.
And if
they're the 7th or 8th best program. They're the 7th or 8th best program in the league, just based on what I view program strength, and that isn't even beginning to take into account archaic offense.
You're going into that. I don't know, like the whole wipe, because to me, like the only end game here that we're talking about, if 9-3, 10-2 is not going to be good enough for Iowa fan. And not every Iowa fan, but in general, like if that's not going to be good enough this year, the only end game we're talking about is a complete ouster of the regime.
Yeah, because they're not going to change otherwise. They're not going to all of a sudden, Kirk's not going to change and say, we're going to go air raid. Like I said on my Sunday, this is zombie raid. This is living the walk of the living dead on offense. I mean, when you get 4 first downs and 6 turnovers, you have one of the worst time of possessions I've ever seen in my life for my favorite teams. It wasn't quite the worst ever. That happened in 2017 Rutgers against Michigan State. I looked that up in the game. This is horrible. And I've moved from disappointment to apathy to now I feel like I'm being gaslit. Every summer, every spring, they're fucking gaslighting me. And I don't like that. Just keep saying we're going to be the shitty offense. Just keep saying it. Dude, I think Cade McNamara's quotes today from the press conference.
He looked defeated. His whole deal, like, I'm not calling the plays.
Yeah, I'm just the quarterback. I'm not calling the plays or doing any of that. Nico Reganey later. I'm not calling the plays. Dude, this ain't what Cade was sold. This isn't what
about that Caleb Brown kid? He doesn't have a catch, John. He doesn't have a catch.
It's not what Seth Anderson was sold. It's not what any of them were sold. They've been lied to. I don't know any other way to put it.
Have they been lied to, or do the parents just don't? Do they just not know anything about offense in 2023? Is that possible?
No, I don't think it's possible. I just think this is how Kirk knows how to win. And Kirk still thinks that if he wins 10 games, everyone's going to be happy. And you know what? Here's the thing. I need to say this and clarify. I don't buy tickets to games. I don't make donations to the University of Iowa.
Okay. I don't. So I'm just a guy screaming out here into the ether in Kansas City, Missouri. But this is unwatchable. Billy Love and I were texting this. He's done. He's tired of it. Everybody that I know and I communicate with, and we're all about the same age, done. Now, I'm still going to watch. I'm still going to do the podcast. I'm still going to give it my best effort, and I'm still going to try to be objective as I possibly can. But it is work now. So one of my two parlays of the 5 that I hit this weekend, one of them, I teased Penn State's line.
What a brag. What a way to work that in. Wow.
I teased the Iowa Penn State lineup to Penn State minus 19.5. And I teased 2 other games up, won them all, only because I knew Iowa had no effing chance. No chance. I didn't come on here last week and say lock of the week, and I don't really like doing that with Iowa because I don't want to piss people off. You know, nobody wants to come on here and hear, well, the Hawks are going to lose by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, there's an assumption when you do that. Same with me in Iowa State. It's like, oh, you have information. No, I don't. Like Matt Campbell,
you just know when a beat's coming.
Yeah, because I follow it so damn closely. Like I don't.
Yeah.
And that was what I said to Hassel. I don't know if you paid attention to our show on Monday, but I have to admit I've been like totally flip-flopping on opinions I've had in the past here. But if I'm an Iowa fan, like this year, and I know this sounds crazy to some. This sounds crazy to me as an Iowa State guy because I'd kill to have my team playing a championship game again. It was an amazing experience down in Dallas a few years ago. Even though they came up short, it was amazing. I don't think I want that this year if I'm Iowa because it's not going to look any different than what you saw on Saturday night. It's just not. You know, and like a couple years ago, the Michigan one, I'm like, absolutely, you should want to play in that game. You should always want to play for a championship. You're just this away from winning. You know, anything could happen. I don't believe that right now with Iowa when it comes to these elite teams. Now, y'all may go and you're going to beat the crap out of Michigan State on Saturday, and then, you know, Rutgers is going to come to town, and like those games, you're going to be able to coast to those. But it's become such a punchline, like this Iowa thing. Like, I don't think I want to even be on that stage in this actual scenario.
No, I didn't want Iowa there last year, but the alternative meant losing to Nebraska to not go. So I wanted them to win because I don't want them to lose to Nebraska. But here's the deal. You're right. And part of what I was saying earlier about I don't pay for tickets and I don't like donate. They sold out every effing game. All right. They sold out every game this year, again, after last year. I bet there was a lot of people saying, I'm not going to do that again unless there's some significant changes. Enter the gaslighting. Cade McNamara, Iowa goes in the NIL and gets a really, capable quarterback. All right, fantastic. Pick up a couple of offensive linemen in the transfer portal. Get a couple 2-3 receivers in the transfer portal. Sprinkle a little love all over the place. Get an all, first team all ACC linebacker. Okay, this is going to be great. We're just reloading. Here we go. We're actually going to have a fun offense now. No, it's abysmal, and that's where the anger comes from. And that's where I wonder next year if people are like, I'm done.
Well, what's the answer? What are you going to do at quarterback next year? Is it Levis?
It's probably going to be Marco Linez or
how. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot about him. The guy who's redshirting.
You got the skid loader and Deacon Hill and all that. I don't know, Chris. I can't let myself go there because I don't want to experience another season of this. And there's still 8 or 9 or 10 games left in this season. And
does Bob Stoops take your call?
Mine? No.
Iowa's?
Maybe to talk to him. But I mean, the only way I'd do Bob Stoops is if LeVar Woods was the coach in waiting and Bob Stoops was coming in for a couple, 2-3 years. But then how do you can get recruited against for that? So no, I wouldn't call Bob Stoops. I would hire LeVar Woods. I would. I think LeVar Woods. I think Kirk Ferentz runs a really good program. It's a really buttoned up professional system. LeVar's been with Kirk Ferentz for 2 decades. He played for him. Mm-hmm. And I think a number of current Iowa assistant coaches would be on LeVar's staff. I don't know if Phil Parker would. Maybe he's done. Yeah, I would. Because here's the thing. I want somebody to coach Iowa that knows how hard of a job it is.
Bobby Stoops?
Yes, but I don't. Why would Bob Stoops do that?
I'll tell you why.
And then,
because these guys like to come full circle, and in this era, Bob Stoops takes over the Iowa job, and it's not a rebuild. It's not.
Okay, if I could have him for 5 years.
Sure, but like my point is Stoops could come in and sign 30 transfers in the offseason, and y'all are ranked in the top 25. Like it not a rebuild because I was not down. But like my point is it's just we're not program building anymore. Pay him $6 million a year with your Big Ten money. You know, the money that's left after the lawsuits. Sorry, that was totally a cyclone jab, but I had to.
Truth, dude. I didn't flinch.
No, but I'm serious. Like, I feel like that's one thing that maybe Stoops would be like, yeah, you know what? Like, that's the one challenge I would take in my life is to go back home and take over for Kirk, his buddy Kirk. I don't know. Or maybe he's going to be pissed off because of the Brian situation too. I don't know. I just think it out loud.
No, I don't see that. Listen, if I knew I could get Bob Stoops, the best of Bob Stoops for 5 years, okay, I'd do that. I just don't know. But your point on the program rebuilds, and I mean, Iowa's program is still in good footing. If they win 8, 9, 10 games this year, it's still in good footing. This isn't a tear down. So you and Chris on Monday brought up Wisconsin. And you used the word trajectory, that Wisconsin is on an upward trajectory. They are. I've watched all their games this year because I have envy big time of
They
Wisconsin.
are a different team now than they were in week 1.
They are. And to me, seeing this, if their offense continues to ascend and they piss pound Iowa in a couple of weeks, which may happen, then there is no defense of what Iowa continues to do on offense, because I thought that was going to be stupid and that they were going to pay a big price, that big of a philosophical change from what they've been for 30 years. You know what? I'm clearly past my prime. I can't analyze this stuff anymore because I think I'm drawing too much on old days and how things were to myself, the things I blame Kirk for doing. Wisconsin is doing the damn thing. Now, their defense isn't up to the standard that they've been the last decade or more, with a few exceptions. So defense isn't quite there yet. But that offense, you can still run out of an offense with Mike Leach spreads of your offensive linemen and
do it all the time.
I think you can run out of that more successfully. I've only been saying that since I've done sound off, which I haven't done in 11 years. Run out of single formations, spread it out, and that helps you to run easier. Iowa never, ever does it.
I have to apologize to our audience because this is the 10th time I think I've referenced this in 2 weeks, but I've done it mostly with Iowa State because we're starting to have the same problem over here. If you haven't noticed, John, with the offensive stuff, like
yeah,
this isn't exclusive to you guys. You guys aren't the only ones with a reason to bitch over there in Eastern Iowa. The number. So do you know what Leach did? The first thing he did with his stat guy or whoever at halftime of every game during his coaching career, he wanted to see how he wanted the distribution of players that touched the ball in the first half on offense. He didn't care about run, pass, percentages, nothing like that. He only cared about who touched the ball, how many times. Why? You ask? Because
I am curious. Why? Why did he do that?
Because it makes it more difficult on a defense if you know that the entire field is a weapon, right? If every player on the field is participating. Think about that method. The greatest offensive mind of my lifetime in Iowa's offense with the wide receiver situation that you have going on right now. Just think about how ass backwards that is.
Yeah. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I want to pull something up here real quick, make sure I think I can do this, which I could have done last week. Can you see my screen or no? I think there we go. So we go. This is something I tweeted today, retweeted. This is a Mike Leach quote for those of you listening. There's nothing balanced about 50% run and 50% pass because that's 50% stupid. Now, What is balanced now? What balanced is when you have 5 skill positions. If all 5 of them are contributing to the offensive effort in a somewhat equal fashion, then that is balance. And that is to your point. And yeah, dude. Yeah. I love Kirk Ferentz. I will always have an immense level of respect. I wish I could have played football for him because I think there would have been a lot of great life lessons to learn. And I'm envious of those who got to. But every single thing, everything that is a carbon-based life form, every business that exists today, every school, every building, at some point in time, it will not exist. Everything comes to an end. I think that we are there with Kirk. I hate it. I hate it. And again, I could be wrong. I thought it was the end in 2014, and here we are 9 years later. But
how does the fan base respond if they're 9-3 though? Like overall, and
that's the big thing. Maybe there may be more people out there that are fine with 9-3, and they don't care how they get there because I think those people are probably older than me, people that lived through Frank Lauterbur in the 70s and the 19 consecutive years of non-winning seasons that Iowa had from the early 60s until Hayden Fry arrived. And I think it can get worse. And you're absolutely right. It can get worse. And that could start happening next year when no offensive skill player not only wants to transfer in to Iowa, but how many of them are going to transfer out of Iowa after this year?
And then you're down to, your recruits, which is a hard game to be playing right now because if you talk to coaches, one of the hardest things to be right now is a fringe high school freshman or a fringe high school senior because there's a lot of these guys transferring around that are taking those spots because the game is getting older, specifically in basketball, but it's going to start happening in football too, where these coaches now would rather, look, I always use them as an example, but my guy Scott Drew at Baylor, like when they had those epic flops in the NCAA tournament all the time, it's because he had 4 freshmen out there. Well, now, Drew's got a couple of 5th-year guys, he's got a couple of 3rd-year guys, he's got a couple of McDonald's All-Americans, and he's learned how to roster build, and that's what we're seeing across all of sports now. So your point is well taken, and then then it's too late to try and change things up because you don't have the actual talent to do it.
Iowa football has the money, but they don't have the system. Iowa basketball has the system, but they don't have the money. So both of the teams that I root for, in addition to the wrestling and women's basketball.
How does Iowa basketball not have money? Like collective wise?
They correct. They can't. They can't have the kind of money because they keep losing guys to Miami. They keep losing guys to other programs. I keep hearing quotes, Fran McCaffrey, he hates the system. It's pay for play. The NCAA effed it up. You're right. They did. All right. Deal with it.
Yeah.
Deal with it. Go do something about it. Because everybody else has 3 guards in the NCAA tournament that can take it to the rack, except you. Not just Fran, pretty much every Iowa coach since, the 1980s. And that was a very brief period that Dr. Tom had George Raveling's recruits. It's just frustrating.
Well, I think you're going to be able to take it out on Michigan State. If Iowa loses to Michigan State, then it's going to be a whole different conversation.
Over-under's like 35.5, 36.5.
I'd take the over.
I've got a parlay that we'll release on the feed, the Iowa Everywhere feed this weekend. The Prince's 3-leg parlay. But I've got some of my personal stats that I already made tonight since I was down in Kansas for about 3 hours. And one of them, I think I have the under on Iowa's second half points of like 12.5 under. Take the under. Those stats, I know you and Chris talked about them on Monday, but I was texting you guys that the Iowa over under for points for the second half was like 5.5, and then it got down to 0.5, and there were still like 10 plus minutes left. I'm like, are you serious? This is a troll. This is a freaking troll. And they nailed it.
Under,
it's a joke. Huh?
Played the under, didn't you?
I can't live bet because I'm in Missouri.
You're not.
Game.
Okay.
So yeah, and thankfully I can't.
How dumb is that? Like, think about that. Just just theoretical. Like, how dumb is it that if you drive 20 minutes, you can do that, but in the comfort of your own home, it's illegal?
Yeah, 7 minutes for me now. And
think about
it's
how
so
dumb that is. Just how dumb is our country that you have to, hey, if I drive across that street, I can do this, but here I can't. You're not
right.
hurting anybody.
And in 5 minutes in 3 directions from my house, I can go buy a freaking Cheech and Chong blunt joint because that's legal in Missouri, but it's not legal in Kansas. But Kansas, you can wager, you just can't buy weed legally.
Everything's all jacked up.
It is. It is.
All right. Well, good talk. We got to go a little longer than I wanted to because Elise fell asleep watching Bluey next to me.
Oh man, give her a smooch, put her to bed.
Oh well, she's the best. Appreciate you, brother. This is always a good time. Best of luck on your parlays this weekend. Best of luck on the Hawkeyes.
Because last week you told me I was making dumb picks because I was playing the public line.
You know what I do, John? In the NFL, at college, it doesn't matter nearly as much. But I literally just go there and I look at the splits and then I bet with the professionals. That's what I do at the NFL.
Okay.
I don't try and go well, I like that offensive line matchup against that team. No, I literally look at the biggest splits, pros versus Joes, and I just take the pros.
And I never look at those things.
And you're better than me. So.
Well, I'm winning more this year. But the Bills and Dolphins were both -6.5. I teased them both up to 9.5. I was that confident.
Those are good plays.
Turned out all right. This week, one of the picks of the three parlay is the Eagles. I teased it down to -7. It was at 8 when I got it against the Commanders in Philly. I'm sitting there going, what are we missing here? Because this thing looks like the biggest gimme. I mean, even last night I made a straight up heads up bet on the Eagles in their Monday Night Football game.
Those divisional dogs are always dangerous.
Okay, I'll be back here next week after another double-digit Eagles victory.
I'll take Washington in that one. Heads up. Straight up.
Okay. How about you and I just do it? We save the juice.
I'm in. Let's go.
Okay. Deal. All right. Done.
All right, brother. He's Jon Miller. My name is Chris Williams. We thank our friends at Wild Rose Casino in Jefferson, Clinton, and Emmitsburg for sponsoring Miller & Williams here on Iowa Everywhere.